Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things Florida real estate. You heard it right. We're talking about Florida real estate, on how you can take your company to the next level. I bring on so many different guests. I think I've had about 19 so far on my show. Every one of them is just so different. Ever since I moved up to Miami, I'm here in Jacksonville. I meet so many amazing people at the networking groups, at the RIAs, you name it. There's so many amazing people. And one of them I happened to meet last year at the Yellowbird events. She is the bright, bubbly personality, Jannah Jordan. And we are going to talk about with her today how she sold 125 homes last year, over $28 million in volume with those sales. And many of them listings, which is impressive on its own. And I really want to dive in with that, because it's just one thing to be a buyer's agent, but to really get a hold of the people that are selling their house is a whole different ballgame. And she wants to talk about how it's so important for realtors or brokers, because you could do this for a while, but you really got to know the real estate contract. And it's not just any real estate contract, the Florida real estate contract, the standard contract we are all using, realtors use in the state of Florida. And she's going to talk about protecting your clients, because if Jannah's done or sold 125 homes last year, you know she's thought of every little which way nuance to help protect her clients. And she's going to talk about how to handle different types of personalities in the real estate world, because we all know not everybody is the same. Everybody's got a different temperament, attitude, behavior, and she sees all that every day she's in her line of work. One day it's ABC, next day it's XYZ. She's going to talk about all of that and how to handle multiple contract offers. What happens when somebody comes along and offers more? How do you handle those situations? And Jannah Jordan has all the answers to this. So I'm ready to dive in. Jannah, welcome to my show. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for having me.
I've been waiting for this. I even saw you like December, and I'm like, I got to have Jannah on the show. You are just such a bright personality. I don't remember what month it was we met at Yellowbird, but it was one of those just packed rooms.
Oh, yeah.
And
Those
you're
were the
one.
days. Those were the days.
Those were the days, and they will come back. I know they will come back. I look so much forward to having them again and seeing everybody there. The thing is that the first time it happens, it's going to be like 200 people there. It's just going
I
to be a
know.
barrage.
We're gonna have to find a humongous venue for that.
Yeah, we have to find a big venue, maybe 250. Who knows? But I can't wait to do that again. So, Jannah, for all of those out there that don't know who you are, you're in the Northeast Florida real estate area, and who knows, you branch out more into Florida eventually. Once you sell 200 homes in 2021 and
Right.
300, you're getting there. Tell everybody, who is Jannah Jordan, and how did you even get started in the whole real estate world, Jannah? Because before real estate, a lot of the people that get into it were a profession beforehand. They were a doctor. They were in construction. They were doing something for a while. They worked on the railroad stuff. How did you get started? Where did you come from? And where are you now today?
So it's funny that you say that, because I remember, when you grow up, people always say like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or you talk about it, this is what I'm going to do. And, who really knows? The people who really did know and really did do what they said they were going to do, like, I envy you. You are an amazing human. How you did that, don't know. Applause to you. I have bounced around all over the place. I did have one of my best friends growing up. Her dad was in real estate, and we were always like, well, we're just going to do real estate, and I didn't even know what that meant at the time, like, that's what I'm going to do. And then I remember first job out of college, I had all these recruiters calling me all the time, and a lot of sales jobs, a lot of commission-based jobs, because they want these young people. And my dad was very conservative, and he always said, and he was my advisor, and he would say, you need to have something conservative, you need to have insurance, you have to have a steady paycheck, this is what you need. So I just kind of went along, and that's what I did. I kind of abandoned the idea, and I would always fall into stuff. So I have a personality. We've done a lot of personality testing at Yellowbird, and over the past couple of years, to try and find the people who are really good fit for who we want to work with and who we want to surround ourselves with. And so my personality type is the Rainmaker. So I'm always going to find myself in a situation. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to, I'm just going to make things happen. Essentially, is what the computer says. So I'll listen to the computer because they probably are smarter than me. But I went through a bunch of different jobs. I kind of meet somebody. Oh, well, you should come work for me. Okay, let's do that. So I did. But my background was in marketing. So I had marketing jobs. My first job, I worked for a law firm. I was a marketing director for them. It was my first job out of college. In college, I was sold insurance. I did in college. I also did some marketing sales as well for different like grocery stores. I've worked for a financial asset management company also, and then I always worked in a restaurant at night. So I always was like doing all of these different things, but mainly always marketing and people and talking to people and customer service. So when you kind of combine all of these things, I think that's what really led me into being so good at what I do now. But there was a period of time where what had happened was I was working for a corporate company doing, they had like an in-house marketing team, and I was working there, commuting downtown all the time. My husband was a merchant marine, and he was gone for 3 months at a time. And so he'd be gone for 3 months, and then he'd come home for 3 months, or I think it was 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, depending on what ship he was on. So when he came home, we only had a certain amount of time together. And here I am working till 7 o'clock all night at this job that I probably didn't really like in this corporate environment. And I just kind of didn't feel it anymore. I was like, I've always wanted to, get my real estate license and just have, just start something new. And I was like, what if my husband's like, yeah, I'm sick of you talking about, just quit. And one day I came home and I called him. Actually, I called him and he was in Japan. And I was like, hey, like I quit. He was like, well, I'm sorry, what? I was like, yeah. So I was like, so what are you gonna do? I was like, I don't know, go like work at a restaurant for a little bit. I'll get my real estate license. Like I was planning our wedding and just kind of hang out, We had like a honey instead of presents because we already owned our house. We already had jobs. Like we're not like big wedding people. My dad wanted to have a wedding. So I was like, all right, well, let's have a wedding. And we asked for like a honeymoon fund. And we ended up just like hanging out. Like, I don't even think we went anywhere. We went to Key West. We went to Key West for a little bit for like camped through Key West for like 2 weeks, all down through Florida, through the Keys. But
that's adventurous.
There's
so many keys.
Random. It was just random. He's like, do you want to just like go in the truck and go somewhere today? I was like, okay. We didn't have anything, we didn't have kids then or anything. So, but we kind of could hang out for a little bit. I got my license, could relax. He had a good job. So, but I got my license. I was super stoked about it. A bunch of my friends were like, we're going to buy a house. We're going to sell our house. We're waiting until you get our license. So first thing I did was there was a Watson down the street from my house. And I was like, where do I sign? How can I do this? And I instantly had, I think, probably 5 sales in the first couple months just by friends and family. And I was really just like super motivated to be in it. And then all of a sudden I was like, something's kind of weird. And I'm pregnant. So
wow.
I was like super into this new career and changing lives. And I'm going to do so well. And I had these goals. I remember my goal being, I just want to do, if I just sell $1 million in real estate, I'll make what I want, like fine, enough for us to be fine for my first year and have enough income to support what we were living on at the time. And I did it, like very, I didn't think it was that hard, but I had a lot of friends at the time. So I was like, okay, what happens when your friends and family stop buying houses? You have to go out and you have to cold call people. You have to call for sale by owners. You have to call expired. You have to do all these things. And I was on the roll. I was doing all these things. I had marketing expenses. I was sending out postcards. I was door knocking. And then I just freaked out. I was like nervous about being pregnant. I was like, what if I have all these clients and I can't let them, something happens and I have to be there for them and I'm on bed rest? Like, how do I help my clients? And I just kind of slowed down.
as a mom, you're getting to the mom part there, you're
Mhm.
super mom. How did you balance that factor? Because I wanted to back up a bit on like you being the rainmaker and your whole marketing background to transitioning to like a full-time realtor, right? So how did you, before I get to that, how did you balance that act as mom? I want to be able to make sure I keep my clients and scale, cuz like, are you outsourcing? Did you hire out? Like how did you maintain that source of clientele even when you were pregnant?
Well, I wish that I did all of those things, but what I did is I flailed. I put my hands up and I was like, I also didn't know any better because at the time I thought that you have a kid, you have to take care of it. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was very adamant that, if you're going to have a kid, there's going to be no daycare, there's going to be no this, like you raise that kid, that's what you do. And I just was like, okay, that's what I have to do,
Right.
I was really nervous. So I stopped. I mean, I advised friends if I had somebody who, I was also really sick for a lot of my pregnancy. So I had friends that were, that I worked with and they understood and they would put up with me and I would help them with their transactions, but it was very few and far between. But I didn't. So I basically shut down my business that I had just started and was so excited about. And I was a stay-at-home mom, but I became I realized a whole year went by where I was a stay-at-home mom. And
Wow.
it's crazy how fast a year will just go by and you don't even realize, my husband was home a couple times, and I was going to my parents' house all the time and I didn't really have any other friends who had kids. And I just isolated myself. I just felt myself getting more and more isolated. And you're living off of one income that you weren't used to. And you have this kid you're paying for too. And you don't know what you're doing. And I think I had a little bit of postpartum in that.
Right.
But you don't realize it because you're surviving the first year of having a kid. And I basically was a single mom. My husband's gone a lot. My parents didn't live here at the time. They do now. But I just was, you're surviving. You're like, I get up,
Right.
I feed the kid, I feed the kid and I feed the kid and I feed the kid some more. Like what a,
Right. Right.
so make sure he's good. Now it's a year go by and I just found myself, I kind of did an evaluation and I was like, I am not happy. I am miserable. And I told my husband, I was like, I don't want to be a single mom anymore. I'm super unhappy. I can't believe my personality allowed myself into this hole for so long. I mean, I'm glad that I didn't let it go on for years and years, but at the time I was like, I'm going to get back into this and I'm going to do it. So I joined a team because I changed brokerages, joined a team just to have a fresh start. Whenever I change something, I change it and I make that decision and I do it right then. And I started it and I just never looked back. I was trying to juggling being a mom and being a realtor. And then I was like, this is not working. So I hired a nanny and we just went from there. I put him in school. I made sure that I was still home when I needed to be home, but I moved my parents here to Jacksonville from St. Pete and we just kind of all came together and I just never looked back. So that's kind of, it was a real like emotional thing that I had to do and make the leap because it's kind of realized I was depressed. Like I was straight up not happy. And I now like having that realization and making that step was kind of empowering. So I was like, well, shit, like I just needed to make some changes and here I am.
And you made the
And
change, and now you being in the real estate world, you feel happier. Like
yeah.
that you're in your happy place when you talk real estate and you do your listings, you're making money. There's a lot of components to it that you weren't probably feeling before, because I just hear a lot of people say like what they were doing in their jobs before. It wasn't you per se with a job, but you weren't doing real estate then. So once you got back in the game, it's a whole different world. And then you're networking with people, you're making new friends. It's keeping you busy. You're still super mom, but you're also making money and working with your family. It's It's a tall task. I mean, it's hard to do, and not a lot of people can do it. And that's why a lot of people that once they do start having kids, they're kind of out of the game until they get older. But you're just like, I got to do this. I got to get in the game. Jannah, I have to know. So I'm not a marketing background.
Mhm.
Believe it or not. I mean, it's crazy. You would
I'm
never.
shocked.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people would be and are. And I never really did anything marketing wise, except, just stuff like what I'm doing. But you did. I mean, I love how you call yourself the Rainmaker, because being a Rainmaker is a whole different realm. It's a mindset, actually, because I don't know about you, but when I think Rainmaker, I'm always thinking the next thing, where's the next thing we have to tackle? How do we get the next check that gets collected? What's the next thing? It's not in the moment. You're already thinking the next step ahead. And I'm sure you got that mindset. So talk to us about that Rainmaker mindset that you have, because it still is implemented for you today. I mean, you wouldn't be doing $28 million in sale and volume if you didn't have that mindset. And there's got to be a component of how that marketing background ties into what you implement with real estate, because for a lot of people, you can do your mailers, you can do your cold call, you can do whatever you do. But I've had several people like Doran Nissum in South Florida talk about, yeah, you can get your first deal, but marketing, if you don't know anything about marketing, you're not going to keep this on a roll.
Yeah.
You can build it, but how do you continue it? And you seem to have that background. So for those that are out there that maybe have that background, that are not realtors yet, or are, but aren't doing it to the level you are, talk to us about that advice for those out there that can get to that level, that Jannah Jordan mindset.
I think it's more so it is more of it's a mindset thing, and it's not even about like specific things. Like people get really caught up about like, okay, so I need to make a Facebook page, I need to make a this social media page, whatever it may be, and I need to have X amount of posts a week, and I need to do this and this, and I need to have X amount of mailers because the calculation of this is going to have this many leads and this and this. Like all of those things are great statistical information to have and to put out there and just kind of robotically do it, but it hold people back, and it's held me back before too. Now, I mean, I'm the worst. I don't even really do social that much because I'm just busy, and I've put my job kind of in career in a different like avenue of real estate. So my business is based off of repeat clients and repeat customers, as opposed to most people. Yeah, you have your residential sale, and you get a referral from them. So referrals are your biggest network. I mean, that should be your basis of your business, and that just I remember somebody told me one time at the law firm that I worked for originally is they didn't believe in marketing because they'd been doing it for, 50, 60 years. They'd been the same firm. It didn't matter. We don't need a marketing person or anything like this
Fascinating.
but there was some truth to it in the fact that they said, we are so good at our job that it should market itself. And there is something to be said about that a little bit, because if you do a really good job, other people are going to talk about it, and they're going to know that you did a really good job, because results are what matter. Like especially for an attorney. Okay, you are this killer attorney. You won all these cases. You are, you're board certified and all these things. You know, whatever accolades that you continuously get all the time. I mean, those are big deals for attorneys. And it's the same kind of thing. It's results driven. So you get these things when, and people talk about it. Yeah, that is good marketing for you, for sure, 100%. But that people also need to know about it, so how do you get that out there to them? But it's also just doing something like that was back to what I was saying before on a mindset. Is you can't say, I had somebody call me the other day, and she wants to start her own business, but I started my LLC, and I did this and I did that, and what do I do next? And I was like, start doing. Like, just start doing.
Just do
I
it.
don't want to do it wrong. Doesn't matter if you do it wrong. Just do it, because if you don't do it, then it doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter. So whatever you're going to do, you just have to do it and choose what that thing is going to be. It doesn't matter if it's like grandiose or looks perfect or anything like that, which I have a problem with too. I tend to hesitate. But when you realize that if you don't do it, then you just completely failed, and what's the other thing is I always go by, I tell people all the time, what's the worst that could happen? Nothing.
Nothing.
Literally nothing. Like somebody, and if you ask somebody for something and they say no, what's going to happen to you? Nothing. Nothing's going to
Right.
happen.
Right.
So, a swing and a miss. All right, swing again. One day you'll hit it.
Right. And
So
you and I kind of have that same mindset of just do it.
just
Right.
do
For
it.
the longest time, I don't know. It was something of, I was thinking maybe too much about certain projects and should I do this? Should I do that? And I don't know if it was sometime around like just jumping into working for a law firm or maybe a little after that when I realized like I'm the type of personality that I got to just do it. I can always tweak it or stop it from there if it's going to be too much or it's not going to work, but I don't know until I do.
Yeah.
And so you have that same mindset. And that's a great advice for those that are out there that are really thinking about doing it or taking it to another level. Maybe they're already in that realtor profession, but they just want to scale up to that next level. It's just, it's amazing, Jannah. When I do these podcasts more and more, some similar themes come up like consistency and persistence and doing it. It's like, these are really the secrets to doing and scaling is all of these
Anything in any business. So
anything.
yeah,
And I
your
think people
life or
in life, exactly. And people overthink a lot of what they're doing, which is why they don't take it to that next level. But you brought up a great point about referrals. Well, and backing up results. You are 100% right. A lot of even the law industry is results driven, right?
yes.
Like it's one thing to market and say, everybody look, it's all flashy, but then it's another thing to actually turn it around, get it done, and show people you can do it 100%. And it's a juggling act. When I first started in Miami, my mentor there, he was like, you can't just be lawyer. You have to be lawyer and marketer. And that's like two jobs, like two full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And I feel that way, fortunately I have the time to do it, but it is like two full-time jobs. But you brought up a great point about how referrals are everything to you, and how you're succeeding in your business. How are you maintaining or growing those referral bases? I mean, first you have to establish that networking relationship with people, but how do you get those continuous referrals back to you that make these crazy numbers that you're killing it?
Yeah. So my business is a little bit different than most people's. I kind of, and this is back to being a mom. So I was chasing, I was chasing these leads. I would go, doing all the things, doing the open houses, making the phone calls, showing houses at night, going listing appointments at night and weekends, which is a lot of time, a lot of realtors' time. I spend at night and weekends. And here I am, my husband's overseas. I do have a nanny during the day, but I don't have a nanny during the night. Like I got to be with my kid at some point. And I just was sick of chasing. I'm chasing these leads and I'm getting them and I'm working them and it's great. But it was tough having to constantly be, where are you going to be home? When are you going to be home? What are you doing? And I had an opportunity where I was working on a team, and they had large investor. They kind of introduced me to the investor world, which is not every realtor has that opportunity or knows anything about it. And I'll tell you that, there's a lot of people out there who want realtors to work for them. Investors want them to work them as buyers. Like, oh, find me a deal. And they will run you ragged. And I've been that person before. And I'm like, God, this is a waste of freaking time. I'm spending hours and hours for this guy who wants me to find him a house that's worth 50 grand. And at the end of the day, I'm going to make $1,000. And I've spent months of my life for this. Is ridiculous. You have to really evaluate like what, $1,000 might be great for some people, but if I'm spending months and months, you divide that by hourly rate, what are you now making? Like you might as well just be working in, an hourly job at that point. If you really look down, what is your time worth? So I had the opportunity where, one of the investors that I work with said that they want somebody to essentially sell like a designated agent that they sell all of their houses through. And I was like, what does that entail? Oh, you don't want to do it. You don't do it. And I was like, no, I think I do, because in my mind, you can kind of make it how you want. Obviously I work all the time, but I'll be in an office for the most part. I'm not chasing leads. I have them coming to me. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of transactional stuff. It's a lot of time on the phone. But I can sell, as a listing agent, you can have, like right now, I think I have 31 listings, and I can have them from anywhere. I can be in an office. I can be at my house. I'm not going, and yes, if somebody calls me from a signed call that I have or another lead, and I'll go and show them a house, of course, but I'm not going out and showing buyers want to see 25 houses. This week I'm showing 25 houses. Okay, well, I'm driving hours all over the place. I can't have a schedule. I can't, you have to be ready to jump at any time. I can be in an office. I can do my job really well. I can answer my phone, and I can also go be a mom. No brainer,
Right.
and I can do this huge volume and build off of it. It's just this great opportunity. So the other part to it too is, a lot of people can say what they want and say, oh, well, you're given all this stuff. Like, well, I asked for it. Did you ask for it? You didn't ask for it. So it's being able to say that I've continuously, in any position, it's that same concept of, what are they going to do? Say no? Ask
Right.
for the business. And they teach you that in sales training too. And at the end of the day, you always have a contract with you, and you say, so will you sign this today? So will you sign this today? So you're going to let me start this job or what? So.
And we're definitely going to talk about Jannah's negotiation tips, because I can see the negotiating shark come out right now. But Jannah, a lot of what you're saying is finding collaboration with the people that you work around with. And that's probably the biggest success for you with the referrals, is you're a team player, right? And you have to be a team player in all of this, because it's not just you being the realtor. You have to work with the investors, the title companies, the lenders, the appraisers. There's so many hats and people and personalities that you have to engage with, and a lot of it is collaborating with those people, and so many different people out there. And one of the things we were going to talk about on the show is you play those roles and you deal with those different personalities, and it's not always easy. It's not always unicorns and rainbows. It's you have to find the rhythm with that type of personality they are, with A, B, C, or some kind of rhythm that they're in. How do you handle those different, whether it be with sellers, right? Because that's their home. It's sentimental to them. They want to make sure that the right person gets it. Or maybe it's heirs in a probate estate. How do you deal with buyers that not run you ragged, but they can't make up their mind, right? They may, this is just their biggest decision ever, but they want to find the perfect thing. Everybody's got different behaviors, attitudes, personalities. How do you handle all of that? Like, what are you thinking internally, and what's that mindset?
So internally, most of the time, like, these people are just bonkers, right? They're just totally crazy. Externally, you got to be like, all right, let's evaluate a piece at a time here. Come on. But it's funny that you say that. There's so many different aspects of, and the people that you deal with on it. For one, I tell people, like, right now I'm completely bonkers. I've got 31 listings, and half of them are under contract, half of them we have, all of them had multiple offers. And I try, even if I had 5 listings, right? So I have 5 listings. I've got 4 different parties who are calling me and emailing me every day for that one. So you multiply that, and that's how many people are contacting you a day. And that's how many people that you are communicating with, and having to have that open line of communication. And if you don't, the process does not move forward.
Right.
There's so many other, the other thing too is that people are very, this is one thing that the industry, and for investors and realtors too, is is bad about is they don't like, I will work with other agents. I'll give other agents business. If I'm very open and honest with myself and I'm open and honest with my clients and with my peers, that if I don't have time for this, like here, you want to pay me a referral fee? I have this person who just called me. They would like this. I don't, my goal is to help what the end goal is, right? So I'm a problem solver to say, we need to get this house closed. Who's going to best be able to do that. And I think it's me, but I can advise other people to do it. If I have a realtor that doesn't know what they're doing on the other side of the transaction, when it happens all the time, I'm not going to be a bitch about it. I'm going to say, hey, what do you need help on? We can write this contract differently. Let's work together on this. There's so many agents out there who are bullies, and it's my business, not your business. It's not this, like, no, in order for this to work, we're all working towards the same goal. I'm selling the house. You want to buy the house. Let's work together on this, and once you kind of take that weight off and you let that go and know that you have to work together to get this mutual agreement that you want to work towards. And there's no fighting. A lot of people will, when their negotiation tactic is to be a bully, like, we're not going to do this unless you do this. And it's like, that's really not the best approach. But, it just doesn't get you where you want to be. It doesn't. Like, we're going to cancel if you don't do this. I was like, well, if you cancel, this is what's going to happen. And there's also no reason for you to do that.
Gonzalo Corzo calls it the myth of the shark closer. He said the myth of the, he said it's this guy that comes in and says, this is my offer. This is what I'm going to do. If you don't pay it now, we're not going to do anything later. And he goes, that guy never wins the deal. Like he said, like, the myth of the shark closer is this, he thinks this, he's slick. He can negotiate, and it's not negotiating. It's actually just looking like a bully, and it's not going to get you anywhere. And so you see that, I guess, a lot in your field, and it's not what works. What works is communicating and being on the same page about getting towards a common goal. And if that is whether it's the wholesaling, whether it's selling at a certain price, and just trying to get to that common goal is so important for your business. And you see it with sellers. I'm sure you do. They want it at this price. We can't do anything lower than this price. And it's like trying to explain and massage that understanding that there's issues. There's issues with the roof. There's issues with the inspection. You're not going to have that top dollar price that you want because of all these things. And that's a whole area on its own. That
it's
you
very
have
much it's either you're realistic or you're not. And you have to have confidence. I don't care if it's your first year in real estate or your 20th year in real estate. And, that's, back to, if you're not how do you market yourself if you're not, this top agent? If you're just starting out, it's having confidence and knowing that you can get it done. And there's different ways to market that as a new agent too. But it's just you gotta be able to work with people and be very realistic. If somebody is not realistic, either a seller of any kind, if I'm going on an acquisition appointment and they want to sell their house for cash, I say, this is what, this is realistic. Let's talk about it. Okay. What do you think your house is worth renovated? What do you think your house is worth? And you ask them that, and they, okay, well, I think that's a reasonable price. If it's a totally ridiculously out of the park, there's no point in signing a listing agreement on, a retail side. If it's not going to sell, you're doing a client a disservice if you are just agreeing. Being agreeable is the worst thing you can do, to an extent. Obviously, you want to be agreeable in aspects that are correct or are going to benefit you or your client. But if they say, oh, I think my house is worth, $650 and it's worth $550, and you say, oh, yep, sure. Will you sign this contract now and I'll get a listing? Because, if I get a listing, that means I'm somebody, it's like, well, you're never going to get paid on something that's $100,000 overpriced. If it's within reason and they say, okay, well, if I can show you that this within, 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I can show you that this house is not worth this by the feedback that we get, by, everything else, would you be agreeable in this contract to reduce the price by X at this time? That's a different story. But if people are very, very unrealistic, they're going to waste your time and you're wasting their time. So there's no point. I mean, I'll say I'd walk away from a listing before I agreed to price something astronomical. I just don't believe it. You have to, I think you just have to be very realistic and very honest.
It's almost like you're negotiating, not even just with the buyer's agent and almost being the agent to convey those offers, but also negotiating with the seller before you even get that deal. That's why you're getting a listing, right? So you are a negotiating master. You understand the art of all of that negotiation. What are some of those tips, like you were covering, but what are those tips to those out there when it comes to trying to get the listing, or then now looking at the buyer's agent and negotiating with those offers? I've heard some really creative ways on negotiation when it comes to multiple offers, right? Something we were going to talk about is how do you handle multiple contract offers? And I think that segues into both negotiation and explaining it to the seller. Here's what we do. Or now you're the buyer's agent explaining it to the buyer. What are those Jannah tips out there for those that want those new negotiation tips?
So there's two sides to it. So there's negotiations for, well, there's a bunch of different sides to it depending on which way you're working on it. But as far as if I have a listing and I'm the listing agent and I have received multiple offers on a property, there's a lot of different, you want to evaluate, obviously you evaluate the contract, which we talked about earlier. I actually saw CC always hounds on this too, like when she does her social media videos and stuff,
Yeah.
that the contract that you write, your offer is your resume. It is you're putting your best foot forward. And in this market, if you're not presenting your highest and best offer and you're not ready to throw down, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to get the house. So as far as, I'm representing a seller, I have all these offers coming in. Recently, this was the most offers I've ever had on a property. A couple months ago was a house in Arlington, beautiful house, completely remodeled, in that 250 price point. So it just flocked with people. And we had 19 offers when it all came said and done. And at that point, their other part is people will throw money at it. They'll say, oh, we'll pay $20,000 over asking price. It's like, okay, that's great. But you have to say, will it appraise? Who's the lender that they're working with? Have you ever heard of them? Are they, do we think that they're going to be able to get it done? There's people who are asking, how much would you, in this market right now, how much is your buyer willing to pay over appraised value out of pocket if it doesn't appraise? Which I think is wild. I think that is fucked up, but people are doing it. If it was a house that I loved and I knew I'm going to live in for the rest of my life and I had the money to do it, I'm going to do it no matter what. Okay. But for a traditional buyer on the lower price point, they're not going to be able to do that. Right. So we have to be realistic. So there's a lot of terms involved. So are the terms of the contract good? Some people offered, I ended up getting that house under contract and appraised by disputing an appraisal for up 20. We went under contract for $20,000 over list price. We closed it, which was wild. I was like, there's no way to appraise.
That's crazy. How did that happen?
I met with the appraiser. I gave them all these comparables. I talked, that's another thing, is being communicative with all parties and making sure. There's properties where I'm like, I know it'll appraise. It's not a big deal. You still want to know when the appraisal is done. You still want to follow up, make sure that they have every information that they need. But in a particular situation where there might be something in question, you definitely have to provide them with as much information and communicate with them as much as possible. Obviously, you can only do as much as they will allow, because I've got agents where on the other side of it, where I've submitted offers for a multiple offer situation, and that agent never called me back, never responded to my emails. And at the end of the day, like, my client suffered, but at the same time, I have to explain to my client that there's shitty agents out there and they didn't get back to me. And we lost this, probably not because we were a worse offer. And they're also doing their client a disservice too, because if she would have come back to me and said, hey, we have multiple offers. Do you think you can go here? Do you think you could do this? Do you think this, what terms would make that more desirable for us? And then you're getting your client more money. Then you're getting your client better terms. So it's really what you're doing a disservice by just, sucking at your job, really. So I'm still bitter about that one, obviously.
We can see that. We all see that. But
But there's
it's
so many different things. I had actually, this is another one too. I had somebody that, so people always ask for closing costs, right? So people, buyers want closing costs. They always, so we'll offer over asking, but we want you to pay some, want seller to pay some closing costs. I had an agent the other day who was a multiple offer situation, and they said that they would pay for the seller's closing costs. And I was like, you are winning. Like, you are winning. That is definitely the most favorable. And that's the first time I've seen that, which is
wow.
crazy to think of. You're not, you're just, which is all part of factored into your contract. You don't have to necessarily, it was just a really, really good move on their part. It was a very good offer on top of it, but you just have to be creative. There's so many things that you can do with the contract and terms and conditions, and making sure that you have a good insurance company that you can refer them to. You have just a really good solid vendor list that you go, good mortgage guy that you go to him and say, is this going to close? Yes, it's going to close, because there's very few people that can say that.
Oh yeah. And title is a whole other
In title
thing.
too.
Yeah,
Title.
we'll cover that in your world and how I see it differently in my world. I'm like, I got the orders. Are we ready to close? And then you have so many other things because you're doing the all the other paperwork and the docs, and there's just so many things on the title front. But not to get too far away from it, another thing we were going to talk about is that realtors really got to understand this real estate contract stuff. Because like you said, you can get really creative with offers and negotiation all day. I mean, you can be very creative with it, but if you don't know how the terms of the real estate contract in Florida work, you could be off to a wrong footing, or maybe there could be a period of time that lapses and now actually there's no contract, or it depends on it, right? If there's financing or lending, maybe there's different periods. You have to know those little terminologies. I don't see it in my world,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't get into the transaction stuff, but I know so many people that ask about the real estate contract. And like you said, backstage, it's really important that you read it. You sit down, you read it. And in essence, it helps protect your clients from issues that come down the road, maybe with title, financing. Is the deal locked in? Did we get the deal we want? Did we get approved? Talk to us about the importance of understanding that real estate contract, and any stories and experiences you can share with how you learned it, either something happened or actually it benefited you because you did read it. Because NEFAR teaches classes on this on a regular basis, right? Jeff Marks is at NEFAR. He teaches all of that stuff, but you can't be doing this business without knowing it. So what is your experience with the real estate contract?
So I think a lot of people, these NEFAR classes and stuff, and they're looking at a paycheck, like, how do I get paid? How do I get paid? I'm just fill this out. A lot of people's brokerages auto populate a lot of things, they pull it up, it auto populates, they type in the name, they type in the number, and they're good. That's all they need my contact information down here, and they don't actually look at it. So a lot of times too, and especially people miss out on the multiple offer situations because they don't fill out the contract. So I immediately, that's an easy no, right off the list. You didn't even fill out the contract right. I have all these questions for you that you didn't even answer, and they don't have the answers for them too because they don't know. It explains everything in black and white on it. Like, you have 10 days to do this, and this is what that entails. And this is something that I always, like we talked about earlier, that it's about terminology and things like that. What is very common for me to use as terminology is not going to be very common for layman's terms. Same thing with like legal jargon. I'm not going to know what the hell any of that means. So be able to explain that to me very basically. And if you can't do that, then you probably shouldn't be a realtor. But for instance, this is the largest purchase of people's lives. Either if they're selling it, if they're purchasing it, they're either going to be making money or they're going to be spending money, and both of those things are very, very important to people. And they can lose a lot too. And only their time, they've got their family. I mean, you're coordinating a lot of different things. So if you've got a binder deposit of $5,000 and you don't go through with the contract, that when does that come into play? When is my $5,000 going to come back to me? Oh, they think a lot of people, especially in Florida, I know other states, they do it differently. A binder is binding, other
Right.
here in Florida, you have so many contingencies, at least with the NEFAR contract, that buyers are so protected. They can get their binder back through their inspection period. They can get their binder back if it doesn't appraise. They can't get financing. They can't, if you can't get insurance on a property, you can't get financing and you're part of a contingency, you get your binder back. All if you're within those thresholds and those timelines. So making sure that you know your timelines on a contract is really important on both sides because you're protecting your client.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
drawing out timelines probably helps a lot. I think when I was in Miami, I was sent to like a 3-day course with a lot of paralegals and title people. It was actually my first time getting involved in title, even though when I took the class, I had no idea I was even getting involved in title. I was totally oblivious to it. There was a book on the table. I barely even opened it. And everyone's like, yeah, we're doing title work. And I knew then I didn't like it, right? I knew then I
yeah,
didn't like anything with title. And I know now, as I tell people more and more, the more I hear about title, the less I want to do. I mean, title company stuff, right? Like that, not interested in the closing docs and the HUD statement, or the any of that, or the contract review, for that matter. But even in that class, Jannah, they had a day or two, I think it was two, where all we did was look through the real estate contract. I think we did like page by page, and they had like a calendar, and we had like a fake contract, a fake closing of, just to kind of get everybody in tuned with what happens with the inspection periods. And it's interesting when you read it, but when you draw it out and look at a calendar, how quickly things happen on a closing period is so important, because you think that, oh great, your job as realtor is done. I got under contract, got the listing, got the buyer, boom, next on the
good.
next one. Yeah, you're good, right? And then even talking to,
Title's going to take it from here.
yeah, you got it. Okay, delegate or do whatever. Title takes it from there. But I even talked to Kim about that yesterday, and she was like, "No way." I mean, like once you're under that contract, there's even more obligations. And if you're that type of realtor that you get that contract, you bring it to title, and you're on to the next one, it's it doesn't look good, right? Like you have to have a plan in place for your clients and protecting
Yeah.
the clients and knowing that there's other things that are going to come up, because the last thing that you want is them to think that there's new things you didn't talk to them about, expectations about what's coming, and title is what's coming. So
You
I
never
I
want your client to say, well, I didn't know that.
right. I mean, you don't
Which
want that.
people say all the time, like, well, right here on this day, we discussed it. It was email. It's very, you have to be very clear and concise with people and let them know that I actually went on a listing appointment one time and they were interviewing multiple agents and they said that I was like, she's like, oh, well, do you do this? And asking me all these marketing things and things that I would do for them. And I was like, I'm happy to set up a plan for you, a marketing plan with you. And if there's something you would specifically like to do, we would do. But do I typically do those specific things? Like, no. What do you do if they had all these questions. And they said, okay, well, I want to list it at this price and yada, yada. But it came down to why they went with me was they said that I told them, like, oh, a lot of people can get property under contract, but they can't keep it under contract. And that was a big thing for them. They were like, we never thought about that, well, you do all this marketing, get under contract and do this and this and this. I was like, I mean, in the seller's market, like right now, you really don't even have to do marketing. It's like you get really good photos, you answer your phone, you're communicative, you price it right, it's going to sell. And if not, you've done something wrong already. But the thing that was their thing. They said, you said you can keep it under contract. And I was like, I can. I know there's a lot of creative ways that, and knowing the right people too. I've got all kinds of people in my back pocket that I can call and say, I mean, I'll even tell people I'm not going to accept your offer if it is with some Joe Schmo mortgage company. You have to get pre-approved with somebody that I know and trust because I know that it's going to go through. I'm not going to waste me and my client's time for this whole process, pay this money, waste paying mortgage. We're already moved on to a new house. And the lender says, oh, on the, 28th day of the contract, when our loan approval period's on the 30th, that, we can't get it done. So being on top of it and just really knowing that, how do you keep it under?
And that's amazing in itself that the market's so hot in Jacksonville and Florida that you don't even have to really market to the extent that you probably were marketing before, because as long as you are doing the right things and you're personable and you're communicating and you're doing those tips and tricks that you talked about earlier, you can really succeed in this business. Jan, I was looking through some of my notes. How are you finding great buyers in your deals? Like, what are those tips for finding those great lists or buyers lists that you can always make sure, hey, there's a deal, there's a listing, check out what I got?
So right now I always tell people, like, when I go to a listing appointment or something, I'm like, this is your market to sell. You have, say, and I don't know what the actual numbers are, but if there is 100 houses for sale in Jacksonville right now, there are probably 500 buyers. So there is such a low supply and such a high demand that there are buyers everywhere. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. But there are specific one, if it depends on the property, if it's an investment property, I mean, I've sold everything from, a crappy investment property that's going to sell for $50,000 to $1 million property that's going to go to a specific person. It's really knowing the demographics of who's going to purchase that property. There's a lot of investors out there right now just chomping at the bit and paying astronomical prices for things that you would probably never think they would. But being on, all the different networks for on that side, we do have a large database of, it's really whoever has the most data wins, for and in contacts, and how do you reach those people. And it really depends on every single house. I think every single house is going to have a different demographic and a different area, and a different buyer pool. But being able to know who those people are going to be is your first need to identify that, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, yeah. I think explaining all of that is amazing content for all the realtors out there, Jannah. Um, there's so much to learn in this industry. There's just so many different things to know in real estate. I mean, I don't know all of them. I know there's
I don't
many.
know all of them. No one would ever know all of them. No one.
Yeah,
It's
and there's
impossible.
and there's
And it
just so
changes all
many.
the time.
There's what?
And it changes all the time.
All the time, and new things, different creative ways that you get involved. I mean, there's so many different areas, whether auctions and listings and this and that. Just there's so many different ways you can find an avenue and just a different niche in what works for you. Maybe you're in luxury listings, right? Maybe you're in distressed properties. Maybe you have a combination of the two. There's just so many things. Like while you were saying that, real estate has been amazing for me. I know it has been amazing for you, especially when you're doing 28 million. I mean, it's got to be amazing, right? Like it has to be amazing. It's not just amazing. But in our world, I knew about a personal story recently. Somebody I knew that was going to sell their house. They were going through a bunch of different situations. They sold their house, but at the time, I don't think the realtor ever explained like what title was or anything like that. And frankly, I don't think there is a lot of that kind of explanation to a lot of the sellers, maybe buyers, because buyers know if they're buying. I mean, they know what title is. But for people that are maybe like they haven't sold their house in years, or maybe they just don't know, or heirs or something like that, what steps are you taking to explain those kinds of things, like what title is and what they're going to provide up front? Because I really believe that a lot of people don't, they think it's just a contract. Let's go, let's exchange money and keys and that's it. But title is a whole other world. It's like the deal is great. You got the pool, you got the jacuzzi, you got the great little bungalow in the back, but then all of a sudden there's taxes, there's judgment liens, there's nuisance liens, there's
Mhm.
mortgages, there's a second mortgage, there's a foreclosure happening, there's a tax deed happening. How do you juggle that in talking to some of these sellers and buyers for people that don't know what title is?
So I think that the majority of realtors and I mean, you just don't they're not able to be as creative because they don't understand these things, but they also are scared by it because what you don't know scares you as by, just by human nature. And I don't know everything about title. I'll be the first one to tell you that. There's some things where, I've been in an office and I'm with investors that have been doing this for 20 years, and we'll see something and I'm like, I don't know what this is. And they're like, I don't know either. you know
Right.
so let's figure it out, and we figure it out. You just go to the right people, you ask the right questions, you continue to push. I've had some weird stuff come up on title and we're like, what in the world, how do I get this taken care of? And I had somebody tell me this actually today. She said, did anybody ever ask you, do you know how to eat an elephant? I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, one bite at a time. And I was like, I gotcha. I gotcha. You're right. So, and that's just how you would solve any problem, especially with title, is, just one step at a time.
Right.
So, we run into situations where we work with you too for regarding probate. You've got somebody who they're all excited. Most, they've after they've obviously, say a family member passes away or they've inherited this house, they don't know what to do with it. There's all kinds of different emotion involved. Sometimes it is um they're they're like, oh wow, surprise, I have this property. Or sometimes they're like, I want nothing to do with this, how do I get rid of it? And it might there's just so many different ways that people look at it, but they don't even understand, like, why can't I sell it, my name's on it? I'm like, yeah, but we also need X, Y, and Z. And that's where title comes involved. And they have to explain that to you better, because I'm not going to pretend to be a title attorney. The same thing was, I say, I could advise you X amount with your lender. This is what I do know about it, and this is what I can help you, but you're going to have to get the nitty gritty with your lender. You're going to have to get the details with title. But I do in very basic, in the basic realm of when you go to get a listing or you go to talk to a buyer or seller in a traditional sale, that's not really going to have any title issues like we would typically have, or not typically, but we run into a lot more than most people, is that you say, okay, well, what are my closing costs going to be? Well, I thought it was 6%, and what really it's just a rule of thumb, estimated amount for a traditional sale. You say that it's going to cost you as a seller about 8% of the sales price to sell your home. 6% of that is going to be realtor fees, and 2% of that is going to be title fees. I say it's like when you buy a car. When I explain in layman's terms, you're going to have tax, tag, title, that type of thing is what you're going to be charged. You're always charged an additional amount on that, and it's a percentage of whatever the sale is. And some of those costs and charges are fixed. They're either fixed by, by the state. You have your insurance, your title insurance policies that you can't change that. You're going to have your attorney fees that that's what their office sets. They could probably do some work on that part for you, but they're basically going to be in this range. And I explain it in that layman's way, so they really know what they're working with. If something funky comes up, that is another thing too, the agents do not look at. They do not look at title work, and they will go to a closing table. There's been many times where I don't necessarily always go to all of the closings if I'm representing a seller that's not going to be there, or an investor or something like that. But if for a traditional buyer and seller who've never done this before, I definitely go. I show up, the buyer's agent didn't even show up. She comes in, we go to sign the paperwork. The buyers didn't get their closing cost credits. Wasn't even on there. It was $2,000.
It's a
I was
lot.
like,
Yeah.
sorry, seller, you owe them $2,000. And they're like, well, we've already been here for an hour and the lender can't change it because it's 5 o'clock and this and that. I'm like, well, Mr. Buyer, like, you want to be out $2,000? Like, I don't think so. And we worked it out. But the buyer had no idea. Buyer had no idea. Buyer's agent had no idea. They never even looked at it. And they just almost lost their client $2,000 just because they didn't look at the paperwork. And it's clearly there, So there's little things that are, all you gotta do is look at it, for crying out loud. But the title company missed it, the lender missed it, the agent missed it. So you've got 3 people who completely looked over this $2,000. And I mean, I've made mistakes too. I'm not perfect, but you can't just say, "Oh, title has it," or if you are working with somebody, you make sure it's somebody that you know and trust, and you work with them a lot, and you know that they would, you know, do it.
Yeah. And it's, title is just a different world, but you bring up so many things about like, I wish I saw it doesn't have to happen to me. I always require to see the title commitments and everything. I'm like, before I do anything, I'm not doing any probates or anything. I want to see the commitments. I want to see the supporting documentation. I want to know what's going on. And I feel like that should be how realtors are too.
Most
Like,
people don't. Most realtors don't know anything about title. Don't. Oh, there's paperwork in here. There's a deed. There's something. Sign. Yeah.
and that's a problem
Mhm.
because you could be scrambling, driving, gassing up, driving here, doing all these tasks, and you didn't realize that it's going to end up being a short sale now because everybody didn't realize that there was a first or second mortgage, and now it exceeded the amount of the contract price, and everybody's like, wait, what happened there? I thought I had the dream house. I thought we were selling it for $1 million, but now all these things. I just wish there was more of that, like education on what is that. And that's why I walk in a knee farm like, this is what a commitment is. Everyone's like, what is that? And I'm like, make sure you read number 4. That's the most important part, or number 7, or anything that says probate on there. And I like what you're talking about, of these having these expectations up front, because if everybody knew the breakdown of that whole lender situation that you were talking about, and not later at the closing table, everyone would be a lot happier, to an extent, about what the deal is. I mean, if people don't know what closing costs are, and realtor commission, I mean, they sign the contract, they're like, it's for $1 million, but then you do the whole breakdown, it's like, not really, it's like 950, and it's like, wait,
Yeah.
what happened to the 50,000? So many of those things happen on a daily basis at the closing table. And I'm not there to see it because, like I told you before, the more I see, the less I want to do. So I don't
Mhm.
want to be involved in that. But in your world, I'm sure you see that. And I really appreciate the fact that you do want to learn about that stuff and be more involved
Yeah.
in that world. And talking about being more involved in the world of real estate, we were talking backstage about how 2020 you're doing your massive volume of money, 28 million, and now this year you're definitely going to double that. I know you are, but you're going to now transition a little bit more into the acquisitions role
Mhm.
of real estate, and getting into a lot more of learning more about the probate world, maybe some of the trust world, about different titles of property. And it's funny what you're telling me backstage about probate, how you're seeing it more and more come up. I mean, of course, because now you're more involved in what you're doing, but it's something I talk about at the boot camps and those seminars and my online things, about how the silver tsunami is coming.
It is.
Everyone's like, oh, the silver tsunami. Al puts that slide up all the time, and it's got like the wave going, and then it's like, get ready for 2020, 2023, 20, and it keeps going, and everyone's like, really, what's coming? We're waiting. But like you said backstage, when you started getting involved in more of the acquisitions, you're seeing it come up more and more and more. So talk to us about seeing that side in the probate world, and some of your education and knowledge on that.
So you have to. It's been really, really relevant recently. And, it's sad to say too, like it was already coming. We already had a probate tsunami coming, just like statistically, and how people are aging and what's happening in the world. And, you have these shifts, and short sales are also going to be a thing, that are going to be coming up too. I think we've been saying that for a couple of years, but I think that this, with everything that's going on, the short sales will start to come around as well, which will be a whole nother whole nother world for a lot of people. It'll be very different this time than it was before, I think. But as far as probate goes, I've even very recently, we've run across people whose significant others have passed away due to COVID too, which is adding to the tsunami, which is, obviously the death rate is not as well, I don't know. Who knows what's really happening? I don't, clearly, but it's happening. And regardless, people have no idea how to go about it. So being able to be knowledgeable enough to say, okay, what's in your name, but has it gone through probate? Are there any other heirs that need to that this can go through? Also, part of that too is recently we had an acquisition where the gentleman was pretty terminally ill, and the wife wanted to sell the property, and I was like, I had to be very real with her, and she had his power of attorney, and I said, if you want to sell this property, you need to sell this property before he passes away. Your power of attorney is going to be valid for that. Title will close it. There are also different underwriters for different title companies, so we've had to be knowledgeable about that too. So if one title company can't close it, another one might be able to, because they have different rules for their underwriters. So it's being really creative with that. And it's not to be like morbid or like, unsensitive to their situation, but our goal, it's to help people achieve their goals. You want to sell this house. I want to buy this house. In order for us to do that, this has to happen before somebody passes away, because it's going to, at that point in time, we're told it has to go through probate.
Right.
Regardless if you're, on the house or whatever, it has to be written a certain way. And does he have sons? Once on time, it was like some random cousin came out of the woodworks, and they had to reach out and see if they, would be able to take claim to any of this estate, and you have to go through the whole process. So that is something that, and it's unique in every situation, which I'm sure, you obviously know way more about it than I do. I know like just the surface. Does it need probate? Does it not? That's what we were talking about before. I'm like, oh, I don't know. So I'm going to call Al. So
it's a whole other world, Jannah.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn so much about it as they keep, doing the stuff out there. You'll learn so much. And now that you're switching into that, you're going to go, Al, what about this? And now what about that? Yeah, exactly. You're going to learn so much about all of that kind of probate stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's coming up more and more. And it's for those situations that it's at that point, it's at that dire need before probate happens. You want to have those estate planning things in play, those power of attorneys. And you're so right about title insurance. And that was actually one of the first things I ever engaged with Pat Flynn about, and explaining about the title insurance stuff and how every title insurance underwriter is different. I remember there was a story about there was one title commitment that came back, and it said that there needed to be like 3 or 4 probates. And I remember me and him sat down and we were just like, 3 or 4 probates. And yeah, we're just like, that's a lot of probates. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I don't mind doing it. But I said, just to see if you have to do it, just to see, why don't you like try it from like a different title insurance company, not the same one,
Yeah.
And so he was like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So I emailed a title insurance underwriter and I was like, what do you think? And they came back and said, no, we're good to go. It's good to close. And we're just like, what? And we found out that the probates had already happened. Like they were already done.
It just wasn't recorded.
It just wasn't either they didn't pick up on it or wasn't recorded or somebody didn't pick up on it. But it was the point about like, it's amazing what happens when it's like, wait, what? We're good. We can close. And title insurance plays a role, because just like those power of attorney issues, you have to make sure that title insurance approves those power of attorneys, because they don't like those power of attorneys.
Yeah.
If you're self-wheeling and dealing and you're conveying to yourself, you see that kind of stuff all the time. It's like, nope, mom had the power of attorney and she wanted to go to me, but it's like, you use your power of attorney for yourself. And they don't like that stuff. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Something I talk about all the time, which is why I'm still talking about it right now. But it just happens to be that way. But Jannah, in your world, I always end with this question, or I try to end with this question. I always have other questions, but in your world of Jannah Jordan, you come across so many different people, so many different things, lenders, appraisers, title, probate, buyers, sellers. What is the biggest deal killer in any of those transactions for you that could kill the deal, that kills the deal? What is it for you?
The deal killers for the majority of the time recently has been lenders and agents, really, because there's been times where I'll be like, let me just talk to your buyer. Can I just talk to your buyer? Because you're clearly, and it's not even necessarily their fault, but it's knowing how to convey what's actually happening to somebody, because people get, once they, my mind is set, I'm not doing this anymore, this is why, and blah blah blah. Well, they might not have all the pieces to the puzzle, and being able to explain that to them, or they say, oh well, we're canceling because it's the end of our inspection period, and I'm like, well, it's not. We have 5 days after the inspection period to come to an agreement. We haven't come to an agreement yet. We're still under contract. You would lose your binder or whatever. So it's just having that, those are tough. It's dealing with the other people. It's dealing with people. That's the hardest part about it. So I'd say the other end and the lenders, you got to really, really trust your lenders, because they control everything. That's the buying power of a buyer.
Right.
So, I mean, if there's no lenders involved, then,
All
that's
cash deals.
I
I don't think everybody's going to do a cash deal. I mean, I'm sure you take the cash deal any day.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Exactly. Look at her. She's like really smiling about that. Yeah. We don't need lenders. We just give you your cash and we'll get it done. And even on cash deals, it's easier to close too, right? Oh, yeah. So like, that's the thing, is that you're usually explaining to your sellers or buyers, yep, we're under contract 30 days, but it's like, is the lender going to approve this? Is it going to be 45 days? And are we, are they going to approve it right at closing? And you're right. They cause things to go awry. And it's funny, I ask that question every time. Sometimes it is the appraiser, right? Sometimes it's the appraiser. Sometimes it is the title companies. And it really just depends on who it is and what perspective they see. I guess in my world, it comes down to, if I had to answer that, it'd probably be the title work and the title commitment, because sometimes the probates make a lot of sense. It's like, nope, this is it. Even if it's 2 or 3, it makes a lot of sense. But then you get the paperwork back and it's like, wait, there's no equity. There's a mortgage foreclosure. It's going to tax deed in 1 day. But stuff like that kills deals. But lenders is a big one, Jannah. And you see that all the time. And, so Jannah, I thank you so much for taking the time out of your afternoon. It was like having lunch and coffee with Jannah. So this is
sometime, by the way.
Yeah, we do. We do. I mean, I feel like this was like one of the best ways you and I could have like possibly connected and like heard each other talk about real estate, like on a level that everybody would want to hear. And
sometimes I feel like it is super boring, but but you have to be into it. If you're into it and you're talking about it, I mean, it is what it is, it's just whatever you're interested in too. But I really do appreciate it. I want to know more about, need to know more about probate as well. So we'll have to get together and work on that, because I do have so many clients that are just, the other part of it too is they're put through the ringer. They're like the other side of it too is, okay, say their husband did. I have a client too long ago, and they were, it was actually an acquisition that we were purchasing their home, and her husband randomly passed away due to COVID. And she was shocked. She didn't know what to do. She didn't realize that she never really understood. She had a mortgage on her property. She didn't think she had a mortgage on her property. She had to go through probate. She said she had a terrible experience with the attorney that she worked for, and she had to switch for another attorney. And it took months and months and months. And there was nothing crazy about it. Like, it should have been really easy for her, really painless. And by the time she gets to me, she's like, I just can't anymore. Like, I am done with people. I don't want to be, I don't want to list with a realtor. I just want a cash offer for my house. I can't deal with this. It's too much for me emotionally. And it's drained the life out of me pretty much by dealing with one, you have one bad experience, and it's like, it should have been so much easier for them. And that's when you really feel bad. It's like, it doesn't have to be like that. And they're not knowledgeable enough to know that it doesn't have to be like that. They just think, oh, well, this just sucks. It sucks for everybody. So it's going to suck for me too.
Yeah, I think I was in a consult, and one time the potential client was just like, I thought it was going to be a lot more than that. And I'm like, I mean, if you got the right understanding about what happens behind it, it's
Yeah.
really not that complicated. And sure, some do get complicated. I mean, we've seen ones where it's just lunacy. But that's the type that needs to be resolved in court, and that's just what it is. But when you have people out there like you and the whole Yellowbird community that understands like the simplicity in the process, it makes things so much easier. And, you look knowledgeable about it. This is what we got to do. This is how we do it. I tell people all the time that, and I came up with this recently. I don't know why it wasn't in a PowerPoint I had before, but that,
Add it in.
yeah. Now it's in there. Now it's on its own PowerPoint slide that probate real estate is really just another real estate transaction with a puzzle. And so those things in itself, if you can understand that there's nothing different about this, it's just we got to figure out what we got to do on the puzzle side, and maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, and just explaining those things to everybody makes a lot of sense. And don't you worry, I'll make sure you understand the whole probate world.
I'm sure that you will.
Oh yeah,
No doubt. I have no doubt. I
yeah.
need to see that tsunami slide.
Oh, don't worry. It's in like the first 3 slides, and it's like, whoa, everybody knows that the thing's coming. It's got like the gray wave. It's like a gray wave. And
you have sound effects when people are, people might be snoozing. You go like, shh.
Not yet. I don't have those theatrics yet, but maybe
I'll show you how to do that another
Okay,
day.
good. I need to know how to do that. It has like good sound. I'll make sure the sound's up at the boot camp next time. So, but Jannah, thank you so much again. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, or who you are looking for to reach out to you, who is that, and how can they get a hold of you? Your social media handles, your email. How can they get a hold of you? I'll make sure I get that from you anyway, because I've gotten in a better habit now of trying to get all of that stuff so they can find you easily when they look you up on my iTunes or Spotify and all of that. But tell people, how do they find you, Jannah?
Jannah Jordan on Facebook. That's basically my main social media is Facebook on there. And then, so I think it's Jannah Jordan Realtor or just Jannah Jordan. My personal stuff's on there too. You can know anything you want to know about me. Nothing's a secret these days. And then just Jannah at yellowbirdre.com.
All right. There we go. Now you know where to find Jannah, because she is high volume, high listing agent. She is always so bright and bubbly. Jannah, thanks again for coming on. When I have my studio, I want you on there.
I'm excited for this. I'm excited for the studio.
Yeah, it's good. Everybody's going to be like, what is going on? And there's the studio. I got my table, got the logo, got everything going.
Legit AF.
Yeah. I mean, I'm switching offices. I've been in the same office for 2.5 years. That's scary. 2.5 years now. And now I get to go to the other side of the building where it's like brand new space, no closets, no old books. And now I can do whatever I want. And I can't wait to have you there. It would be a lot of fun when it all goes down. So thanks again, Jannah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, if you want more content like this, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel and my Facebook at Al Nicoletti. I have tons of micro content and content, just like Jannah Jordan's podcast today. And I have videos on probate, quiet title partitions, and different things in the real estate world. You can get all the podcasts on there. So again, check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel and the Facebook page at Al Nicoletti. And I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show. Take care.